From the moment the children entered the museum on their class field trip, many of them were simply running around trying to look at the exhibits, and it took a little bit before they were wrangled in by all the instructors and brought to heel so that their tour could begin. They were told this museum is dedicated to the war between the humans and the Chewy. The Chewy, being a large 3-meter tall mammalian, was extremely aggressive to any species they encountered, either enslaving or killing the species they found, and for over a century they were basically unopposed. That is, until they encountered a human excavation group. This excavation group was simply sent to find out if there was any previous civilizations in an area before they started to terraform the planet. This group of only 4 ships looked like an easy victory to the Chewy, a new species for the Chewy to conquer, to enslave, to mate, or to simply eat. The Chewy ship, the single ship that was there, engaged the humans and found out far too late that the humans are always packing. Along with humans, a few other species were in the excavation group and realized what was going on, and they found out that the Chewy had sent a distress call, let them know that there was another aggressive species out there, and that the Chewy need to be ready for a fight. The children sat and watched the video of said battle and how the species worked together to fight off the Chewy in that initial engagement. They listened to the narration as the images shows the fleets preparing for war, noting that those that control a planet control everything around said planet. The Chewy believed that they had held more resources than the humans and could simply outproduce the humans in a war of attrition. It is noted that with the benefit of hindsight, this belief was actually proven correct. The human tacticians understood this and planned to do something impossible, something that hasn't been done in over a century, and that is to take a planet away, a resource-rich planet, away from the enemy. As preparations were made for the invasion, other missions were obviously taking place. Missions that humanity and everybody else thought would catch the Chewies unaware so they could go in and strike without any issue. However, the few missions that did succeed received unsustainable losses, and it was soon discovered that the Chewy had broken all the human ciphers. The children didn't understand this as they passed by multiple different radios and transmitters and codes that were pasted up on the wall. They didn't understand how could the Chewy figure all of these out. Were they that smart? The narration continued and explained the absolute engineering prowess of the Chewy was truly fascinating, but when fighting against them, it was truly frightening. Even the old Navajo code was broken as the Chewy simply watched the movies and documentaries on the subject, and it was simply broken almost overnight. That left only one option for communication, especially once you're on the ground. A sentient species known as the Tinkers by the humans was a humanoid, almost bat-like sentient, with 4 wings on its back, still had its arms, 4 legs, and a very, very wide tail that spread out very similar to a beaver tail. Given their small size and surprising speed, they could fly messages from one position to another extremely quickly. Though this technique had not been utilized in 2 centuries, it surprisingly worked. As humanity says, if it's stupid, but it works, it's not stupid. The Chewy were beyond befuddled at first, as coordinated assaults seemed to come without warning, causing massive destruction. Though the Chewy are strong and very large, the Chewy fell quickly as the humans charged into their lines, guns blazing. The humans were faster, much faster than the Chewy, and carried weapons that would simply sweep away anything within a combined space, making all the Tinkers and many of the other species that the humans worked with simply cover whatever audio receptors they had and simply wait for the Chewy bodies to hit the floor. When the human invasion finally happened, everybody was ready. Everybody wanted to make sure that it went off without a hitch, but we all know about the best laid plans. When humans landed to take Canopus 3, the Tinkers were instrumental in sending messages back and forth to make sure communications could continue and were not intercepted. As the planet began to fall, the Chewie realized that they needed to stop all communications. They needed to stop coordination in the human ranks. They needed to stop the Tinkers. It was then that the order was given to shoot, destroy, step on, even eat any of the Tinkers they get their grubby little hands on. Anything they can to stop them. Unfortunately, by this point, humanity had already reached the ground, had a strong foothold, and was getting ready for the next push. In a massive human push that saw a human unit almost completely cut off from the rest of the humans, they couldn't get any supplies, nor could they get reinforcements, and communication was almost non-existent as there was no direct line of sight. Even though this was the case, if this battalion was allowed to stay in their advantageous position, then the Chewie's availability to travel, to maneuver forces, and even communications will break down very quickly, and the planet will be lost. As the humans try to advance to force the Chewie to surrender, the human artillery was landing in front of them. It was also landing a bit too close. The Chewie knew this, and they realized without direct communications that this artillery would continue to fall and stop the advance of the humans. The order was given to shoot any Tinker that even tried to relay a message back to adjust the cannons. The final Tinker that was still alive knew the risks. He looked up at his handler with a distinct look in his eye, a look that humans knew, a look of determination, a look of sheer will, but also of absolute fear. And knowing the risks, the Tinker just took the message, tucked it into the pack on his chest, and when he was told that this message has to be delivered, he looked at his commander and said, "I'll try, sir." The children watched the video, understanding that this was actual footage they were watching. Some turned away for a moment, but others were focused, not blinking, staring at what they were watching. The Tinker got a running start, even crawling on all fours at one point, keeping its wings down to not be seen, trying to get as far back as possible. It began to run as fast as possible and took flight as the humans tried desperately to cover them with all the fire they could, firing all the weapons they had. Anything, even their death orbs were flying over, even though they were not close enough for the death orbs to reach. It was anything to make sure that this Tinker could make it. Many children watched the video and winced as they saw the Tinker falter from being shot, but he still made it out. With this message received, the advance was able to commence as the plunging fire continued to move forward away from the humans, striking down into the Chewie's lines and forcing them away as the assault came right behind it, and the planet fell to the humans 2 weeks later. The children moved into the next room, some of them still in a bit of shock, but that was nothing as they all froze solid as they saw a still picture of a small casket just a little bit larger than a shoebox with a Tinker flag draped over it. The deep purple draped over both sides and every human around them standing in perfect formation, showing their respect and their honor to the Tinker's sacrifice. The children that usually misbehave in a field trip, usually making a lot of noise, were not doing that. At this moment, you could hear a mouse fart as they walk slowly forward. At the end of the hall, they all stop and look. A similar sized casket, this one more ornate, that is draped with the same purple flag, with a still picture of the Tinker and his human buddies right next to it, that was taken before the battle. Next to the picture was a plaque, written out in Galactic Common, and it said, "Here lies the Tinker Francois, a soldier that risked everything to save the lives of his brothers in arms. Though mortally wounded, Francois completed his mission and not only saved the lives of his men, but also brought the end to the Battle of Canopus 3. Through this action, the Chewie realized that they would not be able to hold planets anymore from human invasion. Their resources, being their greatest strength, would be lost, and they would lose the war of attrition that they so wanted. The loss of the resource planet Canopus 3 turned the tide of the entire war and brought about the negotiations that ended the war. Due to his efforts, Francois has been enshrined with the greatest respect and honor that can be bestowed. May his life be a beacon to all those that see it. There was another small plaque below the casket that said, Staff Sergeant Francois, Species Tinker. Killed in action, October, year 2918. A true soldier, a true warrior, and above all else, cher ami, a dear friend. The children of all different species read the placard and began to leave one by one as the realization of everything they were seeing was hitting them. The last ones to leave was a young boy with a tinker sitting on his shoulder. They were about to leave, and they saw another standing there, and they walked over to the Chewie that had his head down and was in a bit of a trance, a bit shamed at what his ancestors had done. An old soldier walked over to the three of them and asked, Is everybody all right? The Chewie looked up at the human, realized the uniform, and asked, How does one show respect to a fallen enemy? How can I honor them? The old soldier didn't grin, didn't smile, didn't barely blink. He said there's two things you must do. One, you don't ever forget and you remember this lesson. And the other, well, you show honor like this. He turned towards the casket, brought his heels together, stood up perfectly straight, hands by his side, and brings up the salute in a 3 count and holds it perfectly still and says, This is the best way we know to show respect and honor to their sacrifice. Standing over by the door, an instructor saw this, pulled out her device, and took an image. An image from behind of them saluting the casket. An image that now sits inside the museum with a plate under it that simply says, Respect and honor. Hello everybody, this is Syntax. Thank you so much for joining me today on this short story. Before I go, I need to send out some special thank yous to a few of my supporters, and those would be Erica Gem, MTF Guard, Guardian Sage, Douglas Scarborough, SS Demon, Brian Kemp, and Prozac and Pancakes. Thank you all so much for supporting the channel. Everybody else, I'll see you on the next one. This is Syntax, punching out.